I want to talk to you today about the power of touch. In his seminal work, Touching, the Human Significance of the Skin, Ashley Montagu illuminates how the skin is the most important organ system of the entire body. Because unlike other senses, a human being cannot survive without the physical and behavioral functions performed by the skin. He concludes, when the need for touch remains unsatisfied, abnormal behavior will result. Did you know that touch is our first language? Long before we can see an image, smell an odor, taste a flavor, or hear a sound, we experiencing others and ourselves through touch, which is our only reciprocal sense. We cannot touch another without being touched ourselves. Research done by the Touch Research Institute has demonstrated that touch triggers a cascade of chemical responses, including increased serotonin and dopamine levels, which decrease depression. Loving touch triggers the release of oxytocin, often referred to as the bonding hormone. A neuroscientist at the University of Virginia has found that women under stress who hold their husband's hands show signs of immediate relief, which can clearly be seen in their brain scans. In our True Intimacy conferences, we remind couples that clinical studies have confirmed that our drive for relationship is stronger than our drive for food. One of the appetites that feed that drive is touch, also referred to as skin hunger. Studies reveal that skin hunger is as real and as controlling as food hunger, but it seems we don't recognize skin hunger. I quote, "Skin cells offer a direct path into the deep reservoir of emotion we metaphorically call the human heart." Dr. Paul Brand made that statement in his book, Fearfully and Wonderfully Made. Everyone needs to be touched. We believe God not only ordained and mandated it, he modeled it in Christ. Luke 4:40 encapsulates the dozens of instances in the New Testament where Jesus touched people. And I quote, "As the sun went down that evening, people throughout the village brought sick family members to Jesus. No matter what their diseases were, the touch of his hand healed every one. Perhaps the most notable of his touches was when he touched the leper. Everyone else avoided even getting close to a leper, let alone touch them. Throughout his earthly ministry, he touched men and women, children, the sick, the lonely, and especially sinners." Luke 8:42 through 46 reveals more of Jesus' legacy of touch. And it says, as Jesus went with him, he was surrounded by the crowds, and there was a woman in the crowd who had had a hemorrhage for 12 years. She had spent everything she had on doctors and still could find no cure. She came up behind Jesus, it says, and touched the fringe of his robe. Immediately the bleeding stopped. "Who touched me?" Jesus asked. Everyone denied it. Peter said, "Master, the whole crowd is pressing up against you." But Jesus told him, "No, someone deliberately touched me, for I felt healing power go out from me." Purposeful touch increases its power and results. On the other hand, how many times have we touched without purpose, perhaps selfishly or inappropriately? Purposeful touch can be for many things. Let me just list a few. Healing, comforting, compelling, protecting, assuring, loving, and enfolding. Enfolding is the idea of being inclusive, making people feel at home and welcome. But if touching is so valuable and pleasurable, why is it necessary for me to advise so many couples to do more of it? The answer lies in our culture, both relationally and morally. While our Western civilization is highly sexual, it frowns on or ignores touching apart from sex. Morally, the sad mistake of replacing touch with sex has occurred. The cultural ramification of this false and biblically incorrect view is that couples never discover total intimacy even after they marry. Because crucial steps of physical touch and intimacy are skipped and never learned, they are left with a huge marital deficit. A second cultural failure affects men in particular. Because of our culture's fascination with sex, men are left with only three acceptable kinds of touching in today's world: the superficial handshake, the aggressive contact sport, and the sexual encounter. Men have been conditioned to turn to sex whenever they feel any need for loving closeness. No wonder experts believe that our extreme preoccupation with sex in this society is actually an expression of our deep, unsatisfied need for the warmth, reassurance, and intimacy of non-sexual touching. In my counseling ministry, the non-sexual touch deficit in nearly every couple I see is absolutely alarming. I'm not clear about whether it is unresolved issues that cause couples to stop touching, or that when loving touch diminishes, the issues become more intense. What is clear to me is that marital dissatisfaction and the absence of loving touch go hand in hand. Or should I say, maybe hand not in hand. There's simply no way to say more persuasively, "You are not alone. I appreciate you. I'm sorry," or "I love you," than through touch. So take time to touch your partner today and every day. Husbands and wives need to decide today that they will regularly hold, touch, and caress each other. Here are some questions to ask yourself and your spouse as you evaluate your touch quotient. First question is this: do I only touch my spouse when I want something from them? Number two, do I know how my spouse likes to be touched? Number three, do I know how my spouse dislikes being touched? Number four, did we skip initial stages of physical closeness while dating by jumping inappropriately into sexual activity? Number five is for moms and dads. Dads, do you provide appropriate touch to your children, especially your daughters? Moms, do you know how to provide meaningful touch to your children, especially your sons? Have either of you mistakenly avoided physical touch with them because of awkwardness or fear? This is Tim Buttry, keeping it real so you can have true relationships with God and others.